That was quick. Here we are.
I didn't bring my coat. Yeah, here we are. Our first ecosystem, our first port of call is the realm of ice. We're going to be talking all about why ice is important. We had a little introduction to that from Chris Packham and our friends at Autumn Watch. But to tell us a little bit more, I'm delighted to say that we are joined by Professor Andy Shepherd and Associate Professor Mel Sandals. Andy and Mel, are you there?
Yeah, we're here. Good morning.
Andy, nice to see you again. We're in your capable hands. You're going to tell us a little bit about where you are, what you're doing, why you're there, and all things icy and chilly.
Yep, we'll do that. Yeah, thanks very much. So, welcome everybody to Protecting Our Ice, the session that we're going to bring to you today. And we're in Northumbria, in Newcastle, actually, at Northumbria University. And Mel works here. I'm about to move here in the new year. And we're going to give you a quick presentation about Earth's ice and tell you a little bit about why you should be interested in it. And then we're going to shoot quickly to some much more interesting interviews with some of our special guests. So we've got some fantastic speakers today. We've got people from well, there's me and Mel for starters, but there's also people from the British Antarctic Survey in particular. So there's Captain Will Watley, who's the captain of the UK's new icebreaker vessel. And we've also got Nadia Frontier and Joe Cole from Antarctica. If we can link up to them, that will be incredible. So cross our fingers for that. And then at the end of the session, we're going to be talking to the team behind Frozen Planet 2. That's Liz White and Mark Brownlow from the BBC. So it's a fantastic, fun session, and I'm going to start quickly with a quick introduction to the cryosphere. So why should we be interested in the cryosphere? Well, there are lots of reasons, but the main reason is we're seeing lots and lots of rapid changes. So there's an example here. This is the Antarctic Peninsula, where we've seen the disintegration of ice shelves in my lifetime and in your lifetime. They've been drifting away. These ice shelves, you can now sail into the region here and collect measurements from the seabed, and that tells us that these ice shelves have been around for about 20,000 years, and so this is a really abrupt change. It's something that's happened in our lifetime. The way we monitor Earth's ice is from space, because it's really hard to get there, although you'll hear from people in Antarctica today. Usually, it's not easy to make measurements there. So we collect measurements from space. The first measurements in space of Earth were collected in the 1950s, but the first satellite that was really dedicated to monitor space, Earth's ice from space, was launched in 2010. That's Cryosat, and it's collected some fantastic measurements, measurements that show where the polar ice sheets in particular are thinning, and the sea ice cap as well, and where that's retreating. And it allows us to count up how much ice there is on Earth and how much ice, unfortunately, we've been losing over the past few decades. And that's a really important story. So there's ice all around the polar regions. Some of it causes sea levels to rise if it melts, and some of it causes Earth to be hotter than it would otherwise be if it retreats. That's the sea ice that's floating in the ocean. And when we look at our planet, we see dramatic changes. So this is a fantastic animation of the British bases in Antarctica created in Minecraft. And I'm showing you this just to give an indication about the size of these changes. So one Minecraft cube is about a meter cubed, right? That's 1 meter cubed. That's 1 ton of ice. 10 meters cubed of ice is 1,000 tons, and a million tons is only 100 meter cubed of ice. But that's a lot of ice into the oceans. Well, when we look at our planet today, we see actually 10 cubic kilometers of ice is being lost every year into the oceans. That's 1 trillion tons of ice from every corner of our planet. So we really need to do something about it. It causes sea levels to rise. That's the main impact it has. Over the past 20 or 30 years, we've seen about 15 or 20 millimeters of sea level rise, 2 centimeters or so, but that's increased by a factor 6. And we're tracking the IPCC's worst case climate change scenario. So we should be expecting about 80 centimeters of sea level rise by the end of the century. And we need to prepare for that. We need to prepare for that because it causes disruption to our coastlines. It causes, this is in East Yorkshire in the UK, around Hull and the River Humber. We can expect big impacts here over the coming decades. But in major cities like New York, sea level rise adds to natural phenomena like tidal cycles and storms and causes flooding. And we see flooding much more frequently in big cities nowadays. So it's affecting lots and lots of people. And every centimetre of sea level rise brings 2 to 3 million people into a state of annual flooding each year. So it's really important that we do something about it. Some cities like New York can afford to do something about it. They've got a $10 billion plan to protect Lower Manhattan. Other cities can't do anything. This is San Francisco. They've already reclaimed their land, and so they're going to have to build a sea wall to protect themselves from sea level rise. So it's really important that we've got great minds thinking about this in the future. We need people to build better models. This is a climate prediction for Antarctica. We need people to build better models in the future so that we can have more confidence in these predictions of sea level rise. We need people to build new satellites. It takes 10, 20, 30 years to get a satellite into space. And we need people to move into the space industry and design the next generation of satellites so we can track the pulse of our planet from space. And we also need people to protect our cities and to help us live a better lifestyle. So this is Kirkthorpe Hydro Plant in West Yorkshire. And it costs £5 million, but it provides energy, renewable energy for 800 homes. That's about £5,000, £6,000 per house for the entire lifetime. We need more schemes like this. And so it's just a quick introduction to why the cryosphere is important. And we'll hear some real world stories from the rest of our guests.
Thank you, Andy. A lot of changes over the years. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Captain Will Watley, who is master on board the Sir David Attenborough, the UK's new polar research vessel. He joined the British Antarctic Survey in 2008 at the age of 19 and worked his way up the ranks to become captain in 2015. Will oversaw the construction of our new ship and was in command for its maiden voyage to Antarctica in November 2021. Good morning, Will.
Hello, and good morning and welcome. I'm standing on the bridge of the Royal Research Ship Sir David Attenborough whilst we're loading all the cargo and preparing for the upcoming Antarctic season. This ship is a one of a kind, and it's designed especially for us to research over the next 3 decades, and it gives scientists the platform to investigate some of the really important issues that we face, such as climate change, rising sea levels, and threats to marine wildlife. The ship is also a floating laboratory and has loads of amazing design features that allows us to do new and exciting science. An example is the moon pool. In the middle of the ship, there's a 4 meter by 4 meter square shaft that we can deploy all sorts of scientific instruments through. And that gives us the capability to still deploy those instruments when there's ice all around the ship, or even in rough weather. We can use that as a space internally to keep our crew safe and still carry on doing science. We also have robots and submarines which can go away from the ship and collect data from places where even the ship can't reach. And it's a really, really efficient science platform. We have containerized laboratories, so the ship can be altered to provide the needs of each particular project. So each time we mobilize for a new science cruise, different containerized laboratories and different equipment. And the whole crew feel incredibly proud of our contribution to protecting our planet. And I'd be very happy to answer any questions.
Brilliant. Thanks, Will. So can you tell us, where in Antarctica are you going next?
So we're going to be leaving the UK in about a week, and then we'll be heading down to the Falklands for a very quick stop. And then we'll be heading initially into Rothera, which is our Antarctic research station on the Antarctic Peninsula. After that, we'll be opening up some of the smaller Antarctic stations, such as Sydney and the South Orkney Islands, and then off to South Georgia.
Brilliant. So this is a special ship. It's an icebreaker. So can you tell us a little bit about that? How does it manage to get through the sea ice?
So the ship is designed with an ice-breaking bow, so it actually rides up on top of the ice and breaks it with the weight of the ship, which is an incredible feeling when you actually feel the whole ship riding up over a bit of ice. Then you've got the ice and it breaks, and then we can actually continue moving forward. It's got a lot of power as well. So we've also got strain gauges in the hull, which is a really interesting piece of technology. So we can see how we're pushing the structure of the ship as we're breaking through the ice, and we can see how much deflection is going on in the steel plates.
Amazing. It's a large ship. So can you tell us how many scientists can the ship house?
So we can be up to about 55 or 60 scientists and around 30 of marine crew, depending on the project and depending on what's going on. But total personal maximum is 90.
So I've been to Antarctica a couple of times, but I've never been on a ship. Can you tell us a bit about life on board? What's it like sailing on a ship?
It's very comfortable, to be honest. It's no great hardship. We have plenty of space, and we're very aware that a lot of this is people's home. So a lot of people have to spend a significant amount of time here. And there's a lot of social events going on board. The food's very good. People do have to share cabins sometimes, but not always. And generally the mood is very positive on board, because everyone's very excited about the place that we're in or the place that we're going, because people are passionate about the polar regions, and that's why we're all here.
So following on from that question, because you can be away for long periods of time, but what sort of food do you eat?
We pick up fresh food in the Falklands, but we're actually loading a lot of our stores at the moment. Most of the stores we load are frozen, and we have a very skilled team of catering staff who work very hard to ensure that we have a really high standard of food. And we all eat together, and we just go up and help yourself. And even outside meal times, we can still listen. So yeah, the food's brilliant.
Brilliant. And what's different about you're the ship's pilot, right? What's different about driving a ship in Antarctica compared to driving it in the tropics?
Well, there's a huge number of differences. There's a lot more different contributors to your decision making to keep everyone safe in the Antarctic. Ice is the obvious one. The weather can change exceptionally quickly. You're trying to go into areas where they might be poorly surveyed. So we've actually got like a forward-looking sonar. So for navigational purposes, if we're going into an area which hasn't been surveyed, we can actually be looking up to 1,000 meters ahead of the ship to see if there are any obstructions. And just the general geography of the Antarctic and the intricacy of the channels and the navigation provides challenges, which I really enjoy.
Brilliant. Thanks, Will. That's fantastic. We're really, really lucky to have your time. I know you're really busy packing and getting ready for Antarctica, so thanks for sparing the time. It's a fantastic thing that you've done. So our next guests are also from the British Antarctic Survey. It's Nadia Frontier and Joe Cole, and they're polar scientists living and working at the UK's Rother Research Station in Antarctica right now, and hopefully the link's going to work. So Nadia is a marine biologist. She's studying Antarctic habitats, how they function, and what role species play in the ecosystem. She's also part of the only team that's diving in Antarctica at the moment during the harsh winter months. Jo is an atmospheric scientist, and she's the current wintering meteorologist at Rother as well. She maintains and monitors automatic weather stations, which are really, really important. They allow us to collect measurements when people aren't around day and night through winter and summer, that are vital for weather models and also for tracking climate change. So thanks very much, guys, for tuning in and getting up really early, because I guess it's earlier in Antarctica than it is in Newcastle.
Thank you for hosting us. Hello and welcome to Antarctica. You are joining us from Rother Research Station, located to the west of the West Antarctic Peninsula, as you can see on the map. There should be a video playing that we have compiled of clips from our time here in Rother. Is that possible that is playing information?
I can't see it at the moment, I'm afraid, but no, it's playing now. Okay. Fantastic.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Cool. So as Andrew said, I'm Jo, and I am the wintering atmospheric scientist here. And I make all these year-round weather observations so that we can investigate what's going on with our climate. And just having a look out the window, if you can see our window at all. Oh, no, we've gone to the video. It's fine. We'll show you at the end. But we've got icebergs all the way outside our window, and we're living in this icy environment, which is super awesome.
And I am the wintering marine biologist, so I, like Jo, maintain long-term time series about our marine environment by regularly collecting species and taking a variety of water measurements. Compared to the white landscape, there is an explosion of colour and life forms under the sea just waiting to be explored.
So we do lots of different things on station. As you can see from our video clips, we've got lots of different stuff that goes on down here. And something that I'm regularly looking at is clouds. And we have some amazing clouds down here. So we have amazing spectacles of lenticulars and nacreous clouds, which are like ice crystal rainbow clouds in the sky. And they appear really high up in the atmosphere, at like 30,000 feet and even higher. So that's really awesome to see. And those are things that you can only see down here. I also take regular snow measurements and sea ice observations, which has been really interesting this year because we've actually had quite a poor sea ice year because it's been quite warm. But that's meant that we've had some amazing wild ice, and we've had loads of seals, and we've actually had seal pups too.
My team uses diving as a tool to access our underwater office. We have our own boats named after famous Antarctic expeditions such as Erebus and Nimrod. We can also deploy other equipment from the boat, such as an underwater vehicle which has a claw fitted to it so we can collect really deep samples. And we also have a device that measures a variety of water parameters. So this will allow us to monitor changes in our environment, which we have been doing so for the last 3 decades.
So something really lucky to do is to go out into the field, and I actually get to go out on one of our red twin otter planes and support field science. And we've set up field camps such as ones in these tents, and we also go out and we measure lots of different things, from magmatometers to sea ice cores to ice shelf cores, automated weather stations. So life on station is really varied, and I've been here for over a year now, and Nadia's been here for almost 2 because she's crazy, and it can be pretty tough being away from your family and friends for so long in such an isolated place, especially when the sun doesn't come up for about 2 months at a time. But we do have to make the most of it, and we get outside as much as possible. We go skiing, walking in the snow, climbing, and we've got lots of really cool vehicles on station. So we get to go out on lots of skidoos and go up the hill. We've also got a piston bully, a snowcat, and some massive diggers. So snow clearing is something that's really important on our station because we get a lot of snow over winter, and we've got to clear all of that out before we can have the field science come in, ready for the summer season, so that we can get all the scientists out into the field, getting all the important data that they need to support our climate.
Another really great thing is that after work, we can just walk around what is essentially our garden. And as Joe's already said, there is an abundance of seals that either haul out on the ice or on the land. We've been exceptionally lucky this year, and we have seen the pupping of 8 Weddell seals. So Weddell seals keep their pup on the ice for up to 2 months. They have this lactation period from the mother before the seal pups are ready to enter the water and start their lives as independent individuals. We've also seen elephant seal pups this year, which is pretty rare because normally they breed more north, but as the climate is warming, species are shifting their distribution and moving south and finding more suitable habitat. And we also get orcas and humpbacks that frequent our waters. So these are our local inhabitants, just like bees and butterflies would be back home for you.
So when Nadia is out doing a lot of her marine biology, she can get really cold in because they can't dive for very long. So it's really important to stay warm there. But it's also important to stay warm outside of the water as well. So we wear massive down jackets to keep us warm, and we wear these really big boots called baffin boots, which are really specialised, and they're actually from Canadian oil rigs, and they're made to survive minus 40 degrees Celsius, which is really cold, much colder than what we've had here this winter, but they keep your toes nice and cozy.
So like you can see in this video, I wear a dry suit made of neoprene, but underneath is essentially lots of layers equivalent to a sleeping bag. I also wear mitts that make me look a little bit like a crab, and a very thick hood. And along with this, we've got loads of thermal layers because the water temperature is minus 1.8 degrees Celsius, which is the temperature at which seawater freezes. My work is really important because we are able to detect changes in our local environment by having this year-round presence on our research station. Our data will be used to contextualise how global changes will impact species in their environment, and this will then help implement the most appropriate conservation measures, which is what we need future scientists to continue to work towards. For example, our work has already shown that due to increasing temperatures, icebergs are more and more mobile because they're not being trapped in the sea ice as they were in the past. As a result, these ice have a very large keel, so they are generating a scouring action on the seabed. And our data and long-term time series have shown from diving observations that this scouring action is increasing over time, which is having a direct impact on the sea floor as a result of climate change. These are some of the changes that we are documenting. Also looking at how the melting of glaciers will impact the surface waters, and these have also shown some very interesting changes in the oceanographic processes at Rotherham Research Station.
So the changing climate can be seen through global warming and various other elements and natural cycles of the atmosphere as well. And we've already seen that here at Rotherham and Antarctica and beyond. And having a presence down in Antarctica is really important for science because we can develop this continual data set that we're able to produce, which can enable us to look at these changes, both through climate change and our human anthropogenic causes on our environment, that can help us inform really important climate change policy so we can drive behaviour and make these improvements and having a lasting effect on our environment, making areas that are untouched by humanity. It's really important we all can get involved and support these scientists in moving this journey forward and thrive in the future. So we've got some questions that we were asked. Did you want to ask those for us, Andrew?
Well, I'm just going to say the first question. I'm going to join you in about 2 weeks' time in Rotherham, but I'm a fair weather Antarctic scientist. I only visit in summer. So can you tell us what it's like? You've spent a whole winter in Antarctica. How is it different to summertime in Antarctica?
So the winter temperatures are much colder. We had minus 12 degrees this year as the air temperature, and the winter before we had minus 25 degrees. So we've got quite a lot of variability between the years, but the winter periods are very dark. The sun doesn't rise above the horizon for up to 2 months, and we can have 3 hours of twilight during that period where the sun doesn't rise. So we have to conduct all our work very quickly. We have very strong winds during this period as well. And sometimes you can step outside and you can't actually see your hand in front of your face because there is so much blowing snow and it's dark. So yeah, pretty extreme.
Can I just, quickly ask, because you both have such cool jobs, can you tell us how you became Antarctic scientists?
Yeah, so we've both been at university and we've studied in scientific fields. So I actually went back to university last year and studied meteorology, and we've just had a look on the British Antarctic Survey website, and there's lots of amazing scientific jobs out there online that you can have a look at and have a little look through the criteria, and you'll be surprised at how many things you can get involved in, even if you don't go to university, that you can find all these different routes to support science and the field that we can get involved in and make a difference.
Amazing, thank you. So yes, please do go check out the British Antarctic Survey jobs and their website and see all these resources. Nadia and Joe, thank you so very much for joining us today. It's been amazing to talk to you all the way in Antarctica, and I wish you all the success for your field campaign or for your season. So our final guests
thank you very much.
Our final guests are Mark Brownlow and Liz White, who are part of the team behind the BBC Frozen Planet 2. So Mark is the executive producer for Frozen Planet 2. He's worked for the BBC for 27 years and was also a series producer on their landmark series Blue Planet 2 and Planet Earth. He's produced many natural history documentaries for the BBC over the years, including Hidden Kingdoms and Ocean Giants. Liz was a series producer on the Frozen Planet 2 and director of the original series, working on many of the marine shoots, as well as documenting the lives of polar people. To film the series, she travelled twice to Antarctica by yacht and spent 5 months working across the Arctic. Much of her time was working on the sea ice and sometimes diving beneath it. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
So thanks so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you must be hugely busy with the series. It's been a huge success, and we absolutely enjoyed it in our house, at least. So can you tell us, why is it important to film the Frozen Planet? Really, really simple question, but you guys must know.
Yeah, I mean, quite simply, the frozen habitats that are scattered right across the planet are the fastest changing places on Earth. And they're filled with the most wonderful animals, from polar bears to emperor penguins to monkeys that live on the tops of mountains. And we felt not only is it a huge treat to take the audience to these remote, extreme wonderlands, but at the same time, land how important it is that we understand what's going on, because they are changing so rapidly because of climate change.
So you obviously filmed in lots of different places. Can you tell us exactly how many places you filmed in?
Yes, well, because the series covered not just the Arctic and the Antarctic, but it covered all of the cold regions on Earth. We literally filmed from the mountains of Mount Kenya in Africa through to the high plateaus in the Gobi Desert. So we filmed on every single continent on Earth across 102 different filming trips, which took place over about 3 years. And that equates to more than 2,000 individual days in the field for our film crews. So quite a mammoth effort.
That's amazing. That's almost 10 years worth of effort. That's incredible. So, I know I work in the polar regions. It's all difficult, right? But what was the most difficult filming challenge for you?
Well, I was lucky enough to go and film the killer whales down in Antarctica. These are a very special group of only 100 whales that perfected the art of grabbing seals off the bits of ice that they haul out and rest on. And the way they do that is by charging together in a line. They swim at high speed towards the piece of ice that the seal is resting on. And then the last minute, in perfect synchronicity, they flick their tails and create a wave that then knocks the seal off the piece of ice into the water. Just finding the killer whales was a huge undertaking in itself, but thanks to scientists working at Bass and other places, we were able to eventually find them. And also we had someone who unfortunately had a medical emergency. We had to evacuate them, even though our engine broke down in the middle of nowhere. So we had all sorts of fun and games trying to get home after successfully filming them.
So you mentioned killer whales there. Are they your favourite animal, or if not, what's your favourite animal featured in the series?
For me, it has to be the killer whales because they're just so incredible. They are credited by scientists as the most intelligent predator in nature, and they are ruled by a matriarch who's an elderly mum. She could be over 100 years old, and she teaches the youngsters the art of wave watching. So they're really clever animals. Liz, you got a favourite, haven't you?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm a big fan of polar bears and penguins and always have been, but I'm going to say my favourite animal from the series is a bit of a surprise. It's the Arctic bumblebee. And I think that this was a super magical story of an animal that is a real hero. So this tiny little queen bumblebee survives winter, and in spring, when the ice thaws up on the tundra, she has to quickly come out of her little ice hole, and she has to raise a brood, and she's got about 8 weeks to do it. And again, we only knew this story because we worked with scientists who studied them, and we had a wonderful film trip with the team up in Sweden filming them, and managed to find this fantastic little queen and be able to see her raising her brood, filling her little honey pot. Really magical thing. It all happens in the dark, so it had to be filmed using very specialised cameras that allowed us to film in the dark. But it's an animal I would never have expected to see in a film about the frozen planet.
Fantastic. So we've heard that the polar regions are obviously one of the hotspots for climate change, and in fact Nadia and Joe told us that it's a low sea ice year this year in Rothera, right? And so there are big changes to the environment that you can live and work in. So did that affect the way you were filming?
Definitely. I mean, the biggest problem is the unpredictability. So for years, things felt as if they were very fixed and that you could expect to turn up and see the sea ice or the whatever animal behaviour it was happening at a certain time of year. And today things are changing fast because the temperature is warming. So the unpredictability is difficult. So you have to accommodate that when you set out in your filming plans. And certainly places like the Antarctic Peninsula, sort of in the years between filming Frozen Planet 1 and Frozen Planet 2, and even going back to Life in a Freezer, the original sort of cold series made by the BBC years ago, we've noticed a change on the Antarctic Peninsula down where Rothera is. And the penguins are basically moving south. So there's some very, very clear changes that have been obvious, even just between making Frozen Planet 1 and 2.
So it's very clear that we need to protect our ice. So thank you for making the series. Which of your stories best illustrate the need to protect our ice?
We told many stories about how life is having to cope with these rapidly warming worlds. Perhaps one of the most heartfelt was the story of the baby harp seal. These are white fluff balls that live on the sea ice up in the Arctic. They're probably the cutest animal on Earth. Unfortunately, though, they need a good 5-6 weeks to rest up on the ice in order to molt and develop their sleek swimming pelts before they're really ready to spend long times at sea. Unfortunately, with climate change, their ice rafts are beginning to melt faster than ever before, and also climate change leads to more storms, and a combination of less ice, more storms means sadly they're being tipped into the ocean before they're ready to properly swim.
Yeah, so I mean, I sense the same thing when I make presentations. It's really hard because it's usually not a good news story, right? What we're telling, and
It's
in
tough.
particular
It is
for
tough, yeah.
the natural habitat, right? And so I know this might be a difficult question for you guys, but I wonder if you've given some thought to what you think there is to be hopeful about in terms of the polar regions and how animals can adapt and have adapted, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was really fantastic working across the series, we were working very closely with so many scientists, and people do have a sense of optimism. The more that we explain these challenges that are happening in these regions, the more people who know about them, the more chance there is that people will act. I mean, certainly we've seen a difference in 10 years. 10 years ago, people still disputed whether climate change was happening. But in the last 10 years, we've watched governments come together. We've obviously got COP27 happening now. 10 years ago, that wouldn't have had any press, whereas now it becomes a lead news story. So it feels as if it's something that everybody is becoming educated about, and there's a lot more will. So I think the key thing is about communication, and we can all be involved in that. We can all talk to our friends and families to make people aware of the situation and things that we as individuals can do. But I think there's a bigger movement, which is galvanizing governments and countries on a bigger scale to act. And if people are interested, the hope is that we can do something to turn this around.
Thank you. And your series is a key component of this in informing people that we really need to take action now. So for those of us joining, please do feel free to put questions in the chat throughout the day, and then our special guests can answer some of these questions. But just before we get any questions in, I'd just like to ask, what's it like working with Sir David Attenborough?
It's an absolute privilege. David is all of our heroes, and Liz and I had the great pleasure of going up to see David once every 6 months to show him the material we'd filmed. And it was a bit of a game. Could we show David a story, an animal he's never seen before? And he always was so generous in his reactions. He would laugh out loud when he saw the I don't know if you remember, but the walrus that rolls down the beach roly-poly back into the water. He absolutely was delighted with that, chuckled away, and he also was just blown away by the wave-watching killer whales. So he's obviously such an authority. He's a brilliant writer. So he also presented and introduced the series to the audience, and in our very important science show at the end, he was in Vision 2. So we all know that David raises the profile of these series, and just through his wonderful commentary takes us to these magical journeys. So yes, it's an absolute privilege working with David.
Brilliant, thanks. I'm just wondering whether Dallas and Susie have got any questions from the audience that they wanted to throw at you guys. Are you online, guys?
We're here. We wish we were in Antarctica. We aren't. Actually, I think it might be time for us to almost wrap up this session.
I think so. I've got to say, Andy and Mel, can you hear us?
Yeah, we can.
Just want to say thank you so much. That was the most interesting presentation ever, I think. I was absolutely spellbound. People often always ask me, they often say to me, why are you interested in science? And I want to just show them some of those videos that you just showed us. Absolutely fascinating, the work that happens down in Antarctica and all over the polar regions. And also how lucky to work for the Natural History Unit. I'm sort of lucky to work in BBC Science quite a lot of the time. And I know how fulfilling it is and how rewarding it is. Go and be a scientist, that's my advice. Susie, I want to just quickly ask you, as somebody who, you're not a polar scientist, but you've worked up in Svalbard, which is very, very far north. And I'm just wondering what your sort of take on that was, in terms of just living out there in the sort of polar regions.
Yeah, I lived up on Svalbard. So Svalbard is a group of islands really far north of Norway, up in the Arctic Circle, and there's some really amazing science that happens up there. We have some massive radar dishes, and we look up at the atmosphere and the regions above the atmosphere to try to understand the effect of the sun on the Earth. So I lived up there for a few months. It's an interesting place because in the summer, the sun never goes down. So it's beautiful. But in the winter, the sun never comes up. So I've lived there in the summer and the winter, and there's different challenges, but it's a really lovely community. I think that's what you find when you go to these places. The community of people is really strong.
That summer-winter thing is really interesting. When we were hearing from the base in Antarctica, people only talk about summer and winter. There are no 4 seasons in Antarctica. There is only summer and winter. That's right, isn't it?
Well, I mean, there are some quick changes between the two. I mean, there are times when there's a bit of sunshine and times when there's only a bit of night, but yeah, it goes rapidly from one to the other, so.
There we go. Okay, we are coming to the end of our session talking about ice. Andy and Mel, thank you very, very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was fun. Thanks, everybody. And of course, thanks to all of the contributors. It was amazing to have you all.
Really, really amazing. And just a fascinating look at how important ice is when we're talking about climate change. Yeah. When we're taking the Earth's temperature, all of these ecosystems that we're going to be talking about are really, really important. So we're going to be moving from ice to oceans.
But before we do that, we have just a few extra links that we'd like to highlight in case you have some interest in looking into more about any of the topics that we're talking about today. You can download activities and resources from the STEM Learning website. If you're a primary school, you can go to the Explorify website. But there's also a climate change educational partnership made up of a number of different bodies that all have resources that you could go and download if you're a teacher or if you're a student or a family member. For example, the Natural History Museum, the Royal Geographical Society, the Royal Meteorological Society, and the Royal Society itself. You can find links to these organisations. If you go to the questions, the Q&A, there should be an announcement, and that will show the links to these organisations if you want to go and find out more. Of course, there's also lots of downloads on the STEM Clubs Hour webpage, which is part of protectingourplanet.org.uk. And that's useful for everybody joining us later for STEM Clubs Hour. Loads of resources there, loads of activities that you can take part in.
This is the really exciting bit, though. If you want to have a climate ambassador visit your school and actually talk to you live and join all your climate change activities, maybe even deliver a careers talk, use the STEM Ambassador platform to advertise your activity and find a climate ambassador to join in. You do lots of science talks at schools as well.
Yeah, I do. So you can just go to the ambassador platform, let them know that you'd love someone to come and drop by and what kind of activities you're doing, and you'll be matched with somebody that can come along and have a chat with you in more detail and answer all your questions about climate change.
Right, we are going to move from ice to oceans, as we mentioned. I think it's worth pointing out, actually, that even though we're sort of doing these separately, all of these Earth systems are interdependent. They all work together as one big climate system. So when we talk about oceans and ice perhaps separately, they are completely dependent on each other. It all kind of works together as one big
and all of these ecosystems
system.
play a really vital role in our battle against climate change.
Exactly. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll put a holding slide up there and we will join you for Oceans at 10:15.